Picture this. A late-night television studio in Los Angeles, buzzing with an energy so thick you can almost taste it. The audience is leaning forward in their seats, a sea of expectant faces lit by the warm glow of the stage lights. The host, a comedian known for his sharp political wit, is leaning across his desk, a mischievous grin playing on his lips. And sitting opposite him, cool as the other side of the pillow, is former President Barack Obama. What you're about to hear will change the way you think about political comebacks. We're not talking about a stuffy debate or a pre-written speech. We're talking about a moment of pure, unscripted brilliance. A moment where one man, with a single, perfectly timed line, brought a television studio to its knees, sent the internet into a complete meltdown, and delivered a knockout punch so clean, so devastating, that people are still talking about it. I'm going to take you inside that studio. You'll feel the tension build. You'll hear the silence before the storm, and you'll witness the exact moment a simple joke became a cultural earthquake. We're going to break down not just what he said, but why it was so powerful it left his biggest rival speechless. And I promise you, by the end of this story, you'll understand that the sharpest weapon in a war of words isn't anger. It's humor. This is the story of the night Barack Obama didn't just answer a question. He ended the conversation. Let's set the scene. It's a Thursday night in L.A. The show is Late Night with Jason McCready, a staple for anyone who likes their politics, served with a side of savage humor. Jason isn't just a host. He's a master provocateur from Boston, with a knack for getting his guests to drop their guard. The set is intimate. A rich mahogany desk, 2 plush armchairs, and a backdrop of the glittering city skyline. The energy in the room is electric because the surprise guest, teased all week, is Barack Obama. When he walks out from backstage, the applause isn't polite. It's a roar. It's the kind of sound that shakes the walls, a wave of pure adoration. People are on their feet, phones held high, cheering like they're at a rock concert. Obama, ever the master of cool, doesn't rush. He takes his time. He waves, flashes that trademark smile, shakes Jason's hand, and settles into his chair with a slow, deliberate calm that says, "I am perfectly at home under these lights." Jason lets the applause ride for a moment, soaking it in. Then he leans into his mic. "Ladies and gentlemen," he says with a smirk, "you do realize he's not running for prom king, right?" The joke lands perfectly, breaking the tension. Obama laughs along, holding up his hands to quiet the crowd. It's that natural charm, the kind that once filled arenas. Once the noise dies down, Jason leans forward, his eyes glinting. "All right, Mr. President, let's get right into it. You've been quiet for a while. Some people say too quiet. Meanwhile, your old rival, Donald Trump, he's been saying a whole lot. Any thoughts?" The line is bait, and everyone in the room knows it. You can hear a few chuckles ripple through the front row, a sound that says, "Here we go." Obama doesn't take the bait. Not yet. He folds his hands, gives Jason a knowing sidelong glance, and replies softly, "Jason, if I responded to every one of Donald's comments, I'd need a permanent desk on this show." The audience explodes. It's not just the words, it's the delivery. Calm, patient, almost fatherly, but with a twist of humor so sharp it could draw blood. Jason nearly falls out of his chair, covering his face with his cue cards. "See, this is what I mean," he shouts over the applause. "You give me one line and I could cancel my writing staff for a week." The crowd roars louder, but Obama just sits back, smiling faintly as if he said nothing extraordinary. That's his weapon, understatement. He never looks like he's trying to destroy someone, which makes it all the more devastating when he does. But this is just the warm-up. This is the jab before the hook. Jason senses he has television gold brewing. He shuffles his cards, pretending to pick a safe question, then stops. "Okay, but seriously," he says, his tone shifting. "Trump's been talking a lot about the 2024 race. He keeps bringing your name up, blaming you for everything from the economy to, I don't know, the price of eggs. Do you feel like he's still running against you?" The way Jason frames it puts Obama in a corner. He can either dodge the question or face it head-on. The studio grows quiet again. The silence stretches. People are practically holding their breath. Obama tilts his head, a sly smile creeping onto his face. "Jason, Donald has been running against me since 2008. He lets that hang in the air for a beat. The problem is, he hasn't won once. That does it. The roar that follows feels like it might blow the roof off the building. People are clapping so hard it echoes through the studio. Jason slaps his desk, pointing at Obama as if to say, "There it is, the knockout." Even the band in the corner is laughing, the saxophonist holding his instrument mid-note. But what the audience doesn't know is that this isn't even the main event. This is just the opening act. The real haymaker, the line that will detonate the entire national conversation, is still waiting in the wings. And Jason, seeing the opening, is about to guide him right to it. Can you even imagine the pressure? Every camera is on you. Millions are watching at home. And your greatest political rival has been lobbing insults at you for the better part of a decade. What do? Do you get angry? Do you fire back with insults of your own? Or do you do what Barack Obama does? You wait, you breathe, and you choose your moment. Jason McCready knows he's onto something special. The conversation has a rhythm, an effortless back and forth like a tennis match between two pros. But he can tell Obama is holding back just a little, keeping the game entertaining. The audience feels it too. They're no longer just watching. They're participating, leaning forward, hungry for the next volley. Jason shuffles his cards again, part for effect, part to buy himself a second to think. He glances at the camera, raises his eyebrows, and turns back to his guest. "All right," he says, lowering his voice to create a sense of intimacy. "Let's stop dancing around it. Donald Trump has been making headlines every other day. He's called the last election rigged. He's called you everything from a fraud to, and I quote, Hollywood's favorite actor pretending to be a politician. And last week at a rally in Phoenix, he went as far as to say, if Barack Obama had run against me in 2020, it wouldn't have even been close." What do you make of that? The room instantly shifts. The laughter cuts off like someone flipped a switch. This isn't just a funny setup anymore. This is the heart of the matter. This is a direct challenge. Obama doesn't respond right away. He taps his finger against the arm of his chair, a small, rhythmic gesture. He leans back slightly and exhales, as if he's weighing exactly how much he wants to give. "Jason," he says slowly, his voice measured, "I've learned something about Donald. He says a lot of things that sound tough, until you look at the facts. And the facts usually tell a different story." The audience claps, but softly this time, a ripple of respect for the change in tone. Jason, like a good host, doesn't let up. "So, if you had gone head-to-head with him in 2020, what do you think would have happened?" Obama raises his eyebrows, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. "Well," he says, pausing for just a beat, "the first thing is, I didn't need to. Joe Biden handled that just fine." The crowd cheers, loud and sustained. Jason slaps the desk like a gavel. "Ladies and gentlemen," he says dramatically, "case closed." But Obama isn't done. He leans in a little closer, his voice almost conspiratorial. "Now, I'll admit, if it had been me up there, Donald would have had one advantage." He stops, letting the suspense hang in the air like a fog. Jason squints, caught off guard. "What's that?" he asks, genuinely curious. Obama grins, a full, confident grin. He wouldn't have had enough material for 2 campaigns. He's been running against me since 2008, and after all these years, he's still losing. The eruption is immediate and deafening. It's a physical force. People shoot out of their seats. Jason laughs, so hard he slaps the desk twice more, and then stands up, pacing the stage like a coach after a game-winning play. "Oh my God," he shouts over the noise. "That's brutal. That is just brutal." The camera pans across the audience, a beautiful shot of pure, unadulterated joy. People are wiping tears from their eyes. Couples are clutching each other's arms. A group of college kids in the front row are pointing at the stage like they've just witnessed a magic trick. Even the cameramen, professionals who are trained to be stone-faced, are grinning behind their lenses. Jason returns to his chair, still shaking his head in disbelief. "You realize," he says, catching his breath, "that clip just got me 1 million views before the show even ends." Obama just chuckles and shrugs. Happy to help your ratings, Jason. But the host isn't satisfied. He sees an opportunity for something deeper. He leans forward again, his expression turning serious. Let me ask you something. Does it bother you? The constant jabs, the obsession, the way Trump keeps pulling your name into everything. This time, Obama's demeanor changes. The humor recedes, replaced by a thoughtful intensity. He clasps his hands, looks straight at Jason, and then out at the audience. Look, he says, politics is noisy. People say a lot of things to get attention. But here's the truth. Leaders should be focused on people's lives, not their own grudges. If all you've got after years in office is complaints about somebody else, then maybe you're in the wrong business. The applause isn't raucous this time. It's heavy. It's deliberate. It's the kind of applause that carries weight. People are nodding, some standing to clap, not because it was funny, but because it felt profoundly true. Jason nods too, his grin fading into something more reflective. That's actually a great point. So, what do you say to people who feel like the country is just stuck in this endless back and forth between you and him? Obama looks directly into the main camera, as if speaking to every single person watching at home. His voice is calm but firm. I'd say this. Stop waiting for Donald or me to fix your problems. Focus on the leaders who are working right now, at every level, local, state, national, because that's where real change happens. Personal rivalries make headlines, but they don't build roads. They don't lower health care costs. They don't make schools better. And at the end of the day, people want results, not a grudge match. The audience erupts again, this time with a full standing ovation. Jason holds up his hands. Try and calm him down. But it's clear the room has been moved in a different way. It wasn't just about laughs anymore. It was about truth. But as powerful as that moment was, nobody, not the audience, not the host, not the producers in the control room, could have possibly been prepared for what Obama was about to deliver next. The one-liner that would turn into a viral thunderbolt, a cultural phenomenon. The moment was ripe, the table was set, and the knockout punch was coming. The air in the studio was so thick with anticipation, you could cut it with a knife. The audience was perched on the very edge of their seats. Jason McCready was grinning like a man who just struck television gold. Obama had already landed several clean, cutting remarks, but you could just tell something sharper, something more definitive, was still sitting on his tongue. It was that perfect, pregnant silence before a master comedian drops the line that no one, absolutely no one, sees coming. Jason leans across the desk, sensing the moment is here. Okay, Mr. President, I have to ask, you've handled this like a gentleman, but people at home are begging me to push you harder. They want to hear what you really think about Donald Trump and all this constant noise he makes. So, if he were sitting in that chair right now, what would you say to him? The audience gasps and laughs at the same time. It's the question everyone wanted asked but didn't think Jason would have the nerve to say out loud. Obama leans back, crosses his legs, and gives that familiar half-smile, the one that so often comes before he delivers a blow disguised as a thoughtful observation. Well, he says slowly, draw out the word. If Donald were sitting here, I'd probably tell him to relax. He pauses. I mean, he's still talking about me more than 8 years after I left office. At some point, you've got to wonder who he's really running against. Me, Joe, or his own reflection. The studio explodes. It's not just laughter. It's a release. Jason doubles over, pounding his desk with both fists. Audience members are standing up, some spinning around to laugh with the strangers next to them. The band, caught up in the moment, starts riffing spontaneously, a funky bass line scoring the punchline. And Obama, he doesn't laugh at his own joke. He just shrugs, palms up, as if he simply pointed out something painfully obvious. That contrast, the absolute calm of his delivery against the utter chaos of the room, is what makes the line land like a precision-guided missile. Jason, wiping tears from his eyes, finally finds his voice. Oh my God, that's... Wow. I don't even think Saturday Night Live could have written that. Obama chuckles softly. That's the thing about Donald. He's his own material. You don't have to write it. He delivers it for you. The audience roars again, but this time the laughter carries an edge of catharsis. It felt like someone had finally said out loud what everyone had been thinking for years. This wasn't just a joke, it was a diagnosis. Jason, never one to miss a chance to stretch a great moment, leans forward again. Okay, but what if Trump hears this clip? And you know he will, and he fires back. What then? Obama tilts his head, his expression playful but supremely confident. Then I'll know he was watching. And honestly, if I can keep him focused on me for a night, maybe the rest of America gets a little peace and quiet. That line lands like a second knockout blow. The laughter swells so loud the floor seems to vibrate. Jason pushes himself away from the desk, standing up and pacing with his hands on his head. This is insane. You're roasting him harder than my writers ever could. Obama raises his eyebrows. I'm not roasting him, Jason. I'm just telling the truth. It's not my fault the truth sounds like a joke. The crowd absolutely howls. The cameraman zooms in tight on Obama's face, capturing that impossibly calm composure against the storm of laughter around him. It's the exact image that would be screenshotted and shared 1,000,000 times before the night was even over. Jason finally sits back down, trying to collect himself. You know, Mr. President, I don't even think you realize how funny you are. Like, do you ever think about doing stand-up after all this? Obama lets out a genuine chuckle. I'll leave that to professionals. Besides, if I started telling jokes full-time, Donald would probably try to run against me in comedy clubs. That was it. The dam broke. The audience cracked wide open. People were stomping their feet, clapping until their hands turned red, shouting things from the back rows. The band launched into an upbeat riff, trying to contain the energy before it exploded into pure chaos. Jason leans back, throws his cue cards into the air, and shouts, "Good night, everybody. We've peaked." Of course, the show wasn't over, but that singular moment had transformed everything. This wasn't a late-night interview anymore. It was an event. It was raw, unpredictable, and completely unforgettable. But believe it or not, the biggest laugh of the night, the line that would echo across the entire country and go down in political history, had not even been delivered yet. It was still coming. And when it did, it would shake more than just that studio. It would shake the entire nation. The night had already been electric. But what happened next would elevate it from memorable to legendary. The cameras zoomed in tighter. The studio lights seemed to get brighter. Every single person in that audience, from the front row to the cheap seats in the back, was leaning forward, waiting. Even Jason McCready, a man who lives and breathes improvisation, could feel that Obama was circling something monumental, something that would cut through all the late-night chatter and stamp itself into the headlines for weeks. Sensing the moment, Jason steadied himself. He leaned across his desk, lowering his voice as though trying to extract the deepest secret from a close friend. "Okay," he said, his voice now a conspiratorial whisper. "We've danced around this long enough. Let's get real. You've talked about Trump's obsession with you. You've joked about his comebacks. But if you had to sum it all up, his whole fixation, the way he keeps your name in his speeches, his interviews, even in his tweets back in the day, what would you say to him? What is the one thing you want him to hear?" The room fell dead silent. You could hear the faint shuffle of someone adjusting their seat, the soft creak of a camera crane pivoting into position. Obama leaned back, his eyes narrowing just slightly. Then he leaned forward again, clasping his hands on the desk. His pause was a work of art. It was deliberate, powerful, letting the weight of the questions settle over the room like a heavy blanket. Finally, with perfect surgical calm, he looked Jason straight in the eye and said, "Well, Jason, if Donald's still talking about me this much after all these years, maybe I wasn't the president he wanted to replace." He paused for a single, devastating beat. Maybe I was the father figure he never had. The eruption was immediate and volcanic. It wasn't laughter. It was a physical detonation of sound and energy. The audience screamed. People launched themselves out of their chairs, some bending over and clutching their knees, others waving their hands in the air in sheer disbelief. Jason threw himself backward out his chair, stumbling onto the stage with his mouth hanging wide open, his hands pressed against his head, as if he couldn't contain what he had just heard. The band tried to cover the noise with a spontaneous blast of horns and drums, but it was no use. The room had detonated into pure, joyful chaos. And Obama? He didn't crack a smile. He sat perfectly still, composed, almost statuesque, letting the tidal wave of laughter wash over the room. That was the genius of it. He didn't need to laugh at his own line because the delivery was so sharp, so clean. It carved through the air like a shard of glass. Jason finally found his voice, shouting over the din, "OH, my God! Did you hear that? Did everyone hear that?" He pointed at Obama, pacing the stage like a man trying to process a miracle. You just destroyed him. Completely destroyed him. The cameras cut to the audience. A woman in the front row was literally on the floor. She was laughing so hard. An older couple near the back were leaning against each other, tears of laughter streaming down their cheeks. Even the producers offstage were caught wiping their eyes, doubled over in hysterics. Obama, seeing Jason in utter shock, raised one eyebrow almost playfully and added into the microphone, "Look, I'm just saying, if you keep talking about a guy every single week, at some point, people are going to start wondering if you need him more than he needs you." Another wave of laughter, louder and more sustained than the last, tore through the room. Jason collapsed back into his chair, slapping the desk with the flat of his hand, as if to ground himself. This is history. I don't even know what to say. That's going on my wall. Forget YouTube, forget TikTok. I'm printing out, framing it, and hanging it right here on this desk. The line was already more than a moment. It was an event. People in the audience were fumbling with their phones, whispering to each other that no one was ever going to believe they were actually in the room when it happened. And then came the part that cemented it all. Jason, still gasping, said, "You do realize, Mr. President, that whatever Donald says next, no matter what it is, will never top that. He could rent a blimp, he could write sky messages, but that line, that's the headline." Obama finally allowed himself a small, knowing smile. "Well, Jason, I've always believed that when people show you who they are, you should listen. Donald shows us every day. All I did was put into words." The crowd cheered again, a mix of laughter and applause, like waves crashing against a cliff. It was more than humor. It was catharsis. That line didn't just feel funny. It felt true. It felt like something only Obama could say, with his unique blend of professorial wit and ice-cold composure. And that's why, as wild as the studio reaction was, the real storm was just beginning. Because once that clip hit the internet, it stopped being a late-night joke and became a cultural flashpoint that would be heard and felt all around the world. The roar in that studio lasted so long that Jason McCready had to wave his arms like a symphony conductor just to bring the crowd back down to a simmer. It was rare for a late-night show to feel like an arena rock concert, but that's exactly what it had become. Camera operators were shaking with laughter, their shoulders bouncing as they struggled to keep their shots steady. Jason, still wiping tears from his eyes, leaned forward, his cue card scattered across the desk like fallen leaves. "Mr. President," he gasped, "I've been doing this show for 12 years. 12. And I don't think I've ever seen a studio react like this." Obama offered that slow, knowing smile. "Well, Jason, sometimes the truth just needs the right punchline." The band leader, a saxophonist named Curtis Green, couldn't resist chiming in from his corner of the stage. He shouted into his mic, "That wasn't a punchline, that was a knockout." The audience roared their approval. Jason pointed at him. "Exactly. Even my band is stunned. And trust me, these guys have seen a lot." He turned back to Obama. "How does it feel? You know that line, what you just said, is already leaving this room. It's going to explode online, probably before we even wrap this taping." Obama shrugged lightly, leaning back in his chair with an air of practiced nonchalance. "You know, Jason, when you've been in politics as long as I have, you learn not to overthink moments like this. You think about how people at home are feeling. And if they laugh tonight, if they felt a little lighter for 5 minutes, then I feel like I did my job." The sincerity in his tone shifted the energy for a beat. The audience, still buzzing, fell into a quieter, more appreciative applause. They realized they were part of something that had both humor and heart. But Jason wasn't ready to let the tension drop completely. "I've got to be honest with you, though," he said, his eyes wide. "I've interviewed a lot of people who've taken shots at Donald Trump. Some do it clumsily. Some just sound angry. But the way you do it, it doesn't even sound like an attack. It sounds like a diagnosis. And somehow, that makes it hit even harder." Obama chuckled. "Jason, you ever heard the phrase, kill them with kindness? Well, sometimes kindness and a little bit of humor can cut deeper than anger ever could." The audience erupted again. Behind the cameras, producers were exchanging frantic hand signals. One mouthed to another, "We've got it." This is a clip. In the control room upstairs, monitors were replaying the father figure line over and over, the sound engineers struggling to balance the audio because the crowd's laughter had spiked into the red. One of them muttered to himself, "This is going to break the internet." The ripple was even being felt backstage. A handful of crew members were leaning against a wall near the dressing rooms. One shook his head and said, "Man, Trump is going to lose his mind when he sees this." Another added, "This will be on CNN before breakfast." Jason, realizing how rare it was to capture lightning in a bottle like this, tried to reel Obama back in one last time. "Okay, so let's play this out. You know Donald's going to respond. Maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. What do you think he'll say when he sees this?" Obama tilted his head, that mischievous grin returning. Probably the same thing he always says. That the media is unfair, that everybody's against him. Maybe he'll post something at 3 in the morning. But the truth is, Jason, when you're more focused on me than on the people you're supposed to be serving, you've already lost an argument. The crowd applauded hard again, their claps carrying an almost serious tone. It wasn't just a joke anymore. It was a truth packaged in a way everyone could understand. The show's floor manager waved frantically from the wings, signaling they had only 30 seconds before they had to cut to commercial. Jason, flushed and grinning from ear to ear, turned back to cameras. "Ladies and gentlemen, stay right where you are because when we come back, we'll try to recover from this absolute obliteration." The band struck up a funky riff as the lights dimmed. As the applause faded, audience members were already pulling out their phones, texting friends, their fingers flying across the screens. They knew they'd just witnessed something destined to live far beyond that night, beyond those studio walls. But what none of them could have possibly predicted was just how fast and how far that moment would travel once the rest of the world got their hands on it. The second the show officially wrapped, the digital wildfire began, before the studio audience had even made it to the parking lot. Clips of Obama's one-liner were already ricocheting across the internet. A student from UCLA in the second row had posted her shaky phone, recording to TikTok with the caption, "Obama just ended Trump in 10 seconds flat." Within an hour, it had 1 million views. The comments were a goldmine. "Trump's therapist just quit," one wrote. Another added, "He's not running for president anymore. He's running from Obama." On Twitter, political commentators scrambled to get their takes out. A journalist from the Los Angeles Times tweeted, "Obama just reminded everyone that timing is everything in politics." Sharp, calm, and utterly devastating. Memes materialized out of thin air. Split-screen photos of a pouting Trump next to a serene Obama with the caption, "Talk to me when you're over it." Cable news networks weren't far behind. CNN cut into their late-night programming to replay the moment, the anchor struggling to keep a straight face. "Folks," she said, "we don't usually cover late-night comedy this way, but this was different." MSNBC ran the clip on a loop, breaking down Obama's delivery like it was game tape. Meanwhile, Fox News scrambled for a response, running a cheer in that read, "Obama's cheap shot at Trump sparks outrage." But even their own panel couldn't hide their smirks as they tried to downplay it. By the time the sun rose on the East Coast, the video was at the top of YouTube's trending page. One clip, titled "Obama Destroys Trump with Savage Line on Live TV," had 5 million views before most people had finished their morning coffee. The speed was dizzying. Reddit threads exploded with thousands of comments dissecting every word, every pause. He paused for 6 seconds before the punchline. One user wrote, "6. That's why it hit like a freight train." Another replied, "Trump has Truth Social." Obama has timing. Guess which one works better. The next evening, the other late-night hosts paid tribute. Jimmy Kimmel opened his monologue with, "So, I was gonna tell a Trump joke tonight, but feels like Obama already told the last one." Stephen Colbert followed suit. "Obama doesn't even need a Netflix special," he said. "He just needs one chair, one camera, and one Trump rally clip." His audience howled as he replayed the moment for them, and they laughed just as hard as the original crowd in L.A. For Trump supporters, however, it was chaos. On Facebook, conservative groups were furious, calling the line disrespectful and beneath a former president. And then at 3:17 a.m., the man himself weighed in on Truth Social, posting in all caps, "Obama was never funny. Low rating show. Totally fake audience. Sad." The post, of course, was instantly screenshotted and mocked mercilessly across the internet. One reply went viral. "Obama lives in his head rent-free, and Trump just paid the security deposit." Meanwhile, average Americans were texting the clip to their friends, playing it in office break rooms, watching it on the subway. A man in Dallas filmed his grandmother's reaction as she saw it on her iPad. She nearly fell out of her chair laughing. A high school teacher in Portland said his students quoted the line so much he had to turn it into a lesson on the power of rhetoric. What gave the clip its incredible staying power wasn't just that it was funny, it was that it felt true. It wasn't a rehearsed soundbite. It was a moment of pure, unvarnished wit that cut through years of political noise. And because it was so clean, so disarming, people wanted to share it. Within 48 hours, the clip had amassed over 50 million views across all platforms. Hashtags like hashtag Obama mic drop and hashtag father figure trended for days. But as the internet storm raged, everyone was asking the same question. How would Trump himself respond when the cameras were on him and a roaring crowd was at his back? The answer, everyone knew, was coming soon, and it was going to be loud. By the weekend, the anticipation had reached a boiling point. The political world held its breath, waiting. Donald Trump was scheduled to speak at a rally in Des Moines, Iowa, and the press descended on the city in droves. They weren't there to cover policy. They were there for the comeback. The rally grounds buzzed with a confrontational energy. Thousands of supporters waved flags and chanted, their voices a unified roar. Backstage, however, the mood was tense. Aides were in hushed, frantic conversations. According to one staffer who later spoke anonymously, Trump had been fuming ever since he saw the clip. He'd watched it on a loop, each replay stoking his rage. He thinks Obama embarrassed him in front of the whole world, the aide said. And Trump hates nothing more than being laughed at. When Trump finally took the stage, the crowd erupted. He soaked it in, but when the noise settled, he wasted no time. "I watched this so-called joke Obama made the other night," he began, his voice dripping with scorn. "The fake news is playing it like it's the greatest thing ever said. Folks, it wasn't funny. It wasn't even close. Totally scripted. Totally staged." The crowd booed on cue. Trump leaned into their energy. "They think they can make me the punchline. Let me tell you something. They've been trying to make me the punchline my whole life. And guess what? I'm still standing. And if Obama ever had the guts to run against me, I would have beaten him too." The crowd roared, but his tone hardened again. "This is what they do, folks. They mock. They insult. They try to humiliate. But they're not really mocking me. They're mocking you. Obama wasn't laughing at me. He was laughing at all of you." The line hit home with his bass. Chants of USA, USA filled the arena. But commentators watching from afar immediately pounced on the contrast. On CNN, a panelist remarked, "Obama used humor to disarm. Trump is using anger to rally." One went viral for its wit, the other for its fury. It's a perfect tale of two very different styles. On social media, Trump's response was met with a fresh wave of mockery. One viral tweet summed it up. "When Obama laughs, America laughs with him. When Trump shouts, America just scrolls past." Even some Republicans quietly admitted it was a tough moment for him. A former GOP strategist told a reporter off the record, "Trump can handle political attacks, but he's never figured out how to handle jokes." That's why Obama gets under his skin so easily. You can't fight humor with volume. And that was the story playing out across the country. In small diners in Ohio, in barbershops in Arizona, people were replaying the clip, arguing about it, and laughing. At a coffee shop in Portland, Maine, a Navy veteran chuckled. He called him the father figure he never had. It's so good because it doesn't even sound mean. It just sounds true. But inside a crowded barbecue joint in Tulsa, Oklahoma, a Trump supporter grumbled, "That wasn't funny. He thinks he's clever, but all he's doing is mocking us." That was the divide. For half the country, it was a refreshing moment of brilliant wit. For the other half, it was an elitist insult. And yet, both sides could agree on one thing. It was unforgettable. A professor of communication at the University of Wisconsin put it perfectly on PBS. Humor is dangerous because it bypasses logic. You don't argue with a joke. You either laugh or you don't. And when it lands, it can reshape a narrative in a way no policy speech ever could. That's why the clip didn't just live online. It echoed in living rooms and workplaces and classrooms. But beyond the joke, beyond the politics, what did this moment truly reveal about leadership, about communication, and about the deep divisions in the American soul? When all the noise faded, the millions of views, the endless memes, the angry rallies, and the roaring laughter, the heart of the moment came down to something much simpler. It was a lesson in power, not the power of a presidency, but the power of communication. Obama didn't raise his voice. He didn't fire back with venom. He didn't try to win with volume. Instead, he used wit, calm, sharp, and disarming. And that struck a chord with millions of people who are exhausted by the constant anger of modern politics. It showed, once again, that humor has a power that outrage simply cannot match. You can argue with a speech. You can dissect a policy. But you can't argue with a punchline that makes an entire room laugh in unison. Think about it. Americans from wildly different backgrounds were all reacting the same way. A grandmother in Dallas was laughing in her living room. A college student in California was sending the clip to her friends. Office workers in Indiana were replaying it on their lunch break. For a brief moment, laughter replaced division. And that is no small thing in a country so often split right down the middle. There's another lesson here, too. It's about resilience. Trump responded with anger, trying to frame himself as a victim. Obama, on the other hand, showed that you don't have to swing wildly to land a blow. Sometimes you can let patience, timing, and a little bit of humor do the work for you. And that's a lesson that applies far beyond politics. How often in our own lives do we face conflict and think the only option is to shout louder? This was a masterclass in how calmness can dismantle hostility more effectively than fury ever could. That's why the moment resonated so deeply. It wasn't just about politics. It was about the human condition. It reminded people of something they had forgotten. Politics doesn't always have to be exhausting. It doesn't always have to be dark and bitter. Sometimes it can be human. Sometimes it can even be funny. Of course, the clip didn't magically heal the nation's political divides. But what it did do was highlight how much people crave authenticity. The reason the joke landed so perfectly wasn't because it was pre-written or focus grouped. It was because it felt real. It sounded like something he thought of right there in the moment. And in a world where so much feels fake and scripted, authenticity is magnetic. That's the real legacy of that night. Not just a viral clip or a catchy headline, but a powerful reminder that thoughtful humor still matters. It can cut through the noise, disarm the anger, and leave people with something to remember long after the outrage has faded. And maybe that's the final takeaway for all of us. Whether you're dealing with a political rival, a difficult coworker, or just family tensions, sometimes the sharpest weapon isn't shouting. It's a well-timed joke. Sometimes laughter is the bridge that words alone can't build. So yes, the world will remember that line as the night Obama dismantled his rival with a single joke. But maybe the real target wasn't a person at all. Maybe it was the bitterness, the heaviness, and the constant fighting that drags us all down. For one night, at least, humor won, and everyone, for just a moment, felt a little bit lighter. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more moments that peel back the curtain on politics, humor, and the lessons hidden inside them, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Because trust me, there are plenty more stories worth telling, and you won't want to miss them.